Hi, and welcome to another edition of the NAIC Insight Series. I'm your host, Bob Green, and I am delighted to be joined today by Ying Macguire, the CEO and President of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. Welcome, Ying.
Thank you, Bob. Glad to be here.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Ying, first of all, congratulations. You have been doing an amazing job since you were appointed in July. There are many people like myself that have quickly become fans of yours and the work that you're doing. But tell us some of the things that are top of mind for you as the CEO of NMSDC.
Oh, thank you. Well, the top of mind is how we're going to grow MBE revenue profitably and how we can create economic impact and help our country close the racial wealth gap.
Outstanding. The racial wealth gap is something that I know both you and I spend a lot of time thinking about. And if you think about it, with NAIC representing 250 billion in capital and NMSDC representing, I'll say 400 or 500 billion, but I know you've got a new number in mind that you'll tell us about. We clearly are leaders on the front line of this movement, and I'm delighted to be working with you on it. So tell us about the vision. I've heard a lot about it. You and I have had an opportunity to talk about it, but what's your vision as the leader?
Yeah, so the vision is really our preferred future, and our vision is really make NMSDC the leading organization for driving socioeconomic equity and generational wealth in communities of color. So everything we work is towards that, the preferred future.
That's awesome. So let's back up a little bit, Ying. So tell us, I know that you immigrated from China, and I heard the Abraham Lincoln story that you came with a dream and $1,000. But tell us a little bit more about the story. How'd you grow up, and how'd you find yourself coming to America?
Yeah, so I was made in China. I always tell people that I was born and raised in a little town near Shanghai. And growing up in my early childhood, I witnessed the Cultural Revolution. It was a very, very dark period of time in China when the government at that time tried to root out educators and intellectuals. And both my parents were the intellectuals. My mom's math teacher and my dad was the CFO for a school district. And so, those are, my upbringing. We had a very modest living, drinking water from wells, cooking out of coals, heated stoves, very modest living. Never have I thought, I would have come to US one day, but I did. It was right after the Tiananmen Square incident, when the whole generation of youth in China were confused about the future. And, I packed my life into one suitcase with the $1,000 to my name and moved to this country to pursue my American dream. And that was like one of the best decisions I've made. So that's kind of my journey from, China to here.
Outstanding. What things that occurred in that journey are seared in your mind that really help frame for you what your dream about coming to America was really going to require from you?
Yeah, so coming to America, that's kind of very interesting. When I was growing up, people talked ill of U.S. and American, and so, but for whatever reasons, when I was a child, I said I want to go to America. In those days, we couldn't even migrate freely within China. So getting a visa to travel outside of China, it was nearly impossible. Um, Funny story, I want to make it super casual and storytelling. Funny story was, I think back in days in China, we had an earthquake, so everybody kind of camped outside during the earthquake period of time. And somebody told me, said, if you want to go to America, you just dig the ground and you dig long enough, and you're going to get there. So I actually did that. I was digging the ground and hopefully get to America. But it was, everything I read about innovation, freedom of speech, creativity for this country was very attractive to me. So I'm so very happy that I'm here.
That's outstanding. So you came to the US, you went to school, and you began your career. Tell us about the early days of your career.
Yeah, so I graduated from Thunderbird. It's one of the best, MBA school focused on international management.
Mhm.
And I remember my last semester at Thunderbird. I went to a MBA consortium in Chicago,
Mhm.
and I met a Dell VP, and he talked to me for 5 minutes and said, "Hey, I need you to fly to Austin,
Mhm.
Texas." I was in Phoenix at that time. So my first role was a marketing manager role. So I'm very grateful to Dell. That was the best training ground. So when I had my first job, I knew nothing about anything. So every role I took at Dell, there are probably 6, 7 roles, I knew nothing about it. But Dell gave me opportunity to do something I didn't know anything about it, but I learned very fast, and I learned from the best. And so from marketing manager, I became brand manager. I went to procurement, direct procurement. I was very fortunate to take a role with the Worldwide Operations Council. It's almost equivalent to like chief staff or
Mhm.
chief operating officer, and it get to really drive company-wide initiatives. We call it BHAG initiatives, big, hairy, audacious initiatives. And so the learning was unbelievable. So I pretty much did everything except HR and legal, and so gained the skill set and the knowledge from most of functions. So helped me to do my job today, because today we're not running like a nonprofit. We're running like a business, and we want to maximize our impact.
So when I hear Dell, I grew up at AT&T, and now when you hear Dell, you think of a big company, you think of Dell PCs on everyone's desktop. But when you got there, it was a much different culture. It was a growth-oriented culture. Dell was a much smaller company, and you sort of rode the wave and helped lead the wave of growth. What are some of the lessons you learned, managerial lessons you learned about Dell and the Dell culture?
Yeah, so when I joined, Dell wasn't as big as this is right now, because now you got EMC as part of it, and
Mhm.
then Michael invested VMware. Like, what a great move! Then we were still like a $40 billion company, but I was doing this program called software services. At that time, like a SaaS was not known in the market.
Sure.
I was in like a 2-person team inside a big company. It's like a startup inside a big company, creating a program to bundle educational software with Dell server and market them as turnkey solutions to universities for improved margins. And so it was like, running a startup inside a big company. And the Dell culture then, it was, you have the big company resources, but you run like a startup company.
Right.
And so today, the lessons learned, like today at MSDC, even though it's a 50-year organization, we're running like a startup company.
That's
And
right.
we're going super fast, a very agile, and because we have a lot of work to do, we can't just take things for granted.
So, Ying, whenever you hear, particularly an organization like NMSDC, there's so many people that would love to be CEO and so many people that apply for the job. People always ask about, well, what did this person do? How did they get the job? And I don't know them. You had quite a run at Dell around supplier diversity. Tell us about the program. Tell us about where it was when you started, and tell us about ultimately the success that it became under your leadership.
Yeah, so NMSDC, has this whole three-leg stool system. So you have the advocacy group, the leadership there, you have corporate members, and then you have MBEs, right? So it's a three-leg stool system. I actually have done all three of them.
Okay.
So at Dell, back in 2006, I was asked to go back to procurement to lead a indirect procurement team, and then they told me, say, hey, we want to take supply diversity to the next level. And I said, what is supply diversity?
Right.
And
little did you know at the time, right?
And I didn't know. So it really, this opportunity led to my first experience with NMSDC. So I knew very little about supply diversity, and I was sent to NMSDC annual conference. It is a small world in San Diego, California. I remember there I met the president then, the dynamic Harriet Michelle. Sure. And I met some of the most amazing MBEs and regional council presidents, and I was a speaker actually. And that experience really energized me and instilled a lifelong passion as a corporate member. And so when I went back to Dell after that conference, I tried to kind of create the same experience for Dell team. So I organized Dell's first supply diversity summit and brought in leaders like Harriet to teach us how to do it. And we actually got to the $1 billion roundtable within 18 months of me, taking that leadership role. And our diverse spend grew from 640 million to 3 billion within 3-year period. And the impact we made to the communities is tremendous. So that's kind of on the corporate side. So when I was representing the corporate Dell technology with NMSDC, I was asked to serve on the regional council board, and I became a board chair. So that's kind of second leg stool.
Yep.
And then the third leg stool, MBE side, the minority owned businesses. So here's what happened. So when I was at Dell, one of the things I championed was taking MWBE global to mirror our global sourcing strategy. And in that process, I got to know many MBE CEOs. And so one of them called, one of the company called Technology Integration Group, they said, well, would you please come over to to finish what you started? And so I decided to, leave Dell and be entrepreneur again. And I joined the company and took the company global. So that's the kind of minority business experience. So that's kind of three-leg stool. But, being a CEO of NMSDC or any nonprofit, it wasn't on my career roadmap at all. Right. Although I always served in the nonprofit sector as a volunteer, not necessarily as a paid staff. But the timing is interesting because 2020 with the COVID and racial issues make you really rethink your career path. Like I packed my bag and walked from a beach for a while, and I was thinking about what I want to do. I was thinking, how do I make impact, whether it's nonprofit or government? And so I came back, and 4 days later, NMSDC search firm called me. And they said, would you consider this position? So right now, I feel like I'm destined to do this.
Well, I agree with you. I do believe you are destined to do this. And I want to unpack some of your answer, because you said a lot just the whole notion of being in all three legs of the stool. Let's start with that $2.4 billion that you increased the program by, that you just sort of breezed over. You mentioned the $1 billion roundtable, and for the members of the audience that don't know what that is, those are the 20. There are currently 29 of them, I believe, 29 companies that spend at least $1 billion with MBEs. And Dell is one of those companies. So you were able to take Dell from 600 million in spend, which is a very respectable number, and drive them up the curve, and frankly qualify them 3 times over to be in the $1 billion roundtable. What were some of the things that you had to do to drive that level of spend increase in what was probably a few years? It wasn't a long period of time. What were some of the things you had to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Number one, we had to inspire the team, because if they don't embrace it, passionate about it, you can throw all the metrics over there.
Mm-hmm.
So really inspire. I mentioned earlier, after I returned from NMSDC conference, I created my own mini conference and brought in leaders from the industry like Harry, Michelle, Dave Stewart, and really inspired our team. Our team heard their stories, what kind of impact that program have made for people like Dave Stewart, for the community of color. So really inspire them first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's a very basic business process, which is one, you get C-levels support,
Mm-hmm.
you have a policy. And then two is, you drive the accountability. So the team, the direct reports on CPO staff have metrics, right, as a part of the performance plan. And then it's teach them how to do it. I remember those days I brought in other CPOs, like a P&G. I remember Rick Hughes, he was a vice chair of NMSDC. People like him, have gone down that route and really, brought them to Dell and teach our people how to do it. And the other thing is, I was talking to a NMSDC consumer industry group just like a half hour ago, and talk about to involve these C-suite leaders with these advocacy groups, attend events, meet MBEs, MWBEs, and get them really hear these personal stories and get them passionate about it, become passionate about it. And so all these different ingredients and components really helped us to get to the $1 billion roundtable. A lot of time, if you put a goal in front of you, and inspire people, and we can get there. And right now at NMSDC, our BHAG goal, big, hairy, audacious goal, is to get to 1 trillion MBE revenue. It's going to require a lot of hard work. It's going to require partners like you to work with us, but I'm confident we can get there.
Well, you have my support, and I'm confident that you will get there. And I'm going to be around to help and also to celebrate when you do get there. And then we'll be able to figure out what the next goal is beyond that. Let's talk a little bit about the stakeholders. NMSDC, you mentioned 50, a number I'm familiar with. NAIC celebrated 50 last year, and this is NMSDC's 50th anniversary. Talk a little bit about the journey, where the organization has been, what it has done well, and where it's going, and what it's going to do in the future.
Yeah, 50 years, a big year. Well, congratulate on your 50 years last year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, you are 1 year older than we are. For people who who do not know NMSDC was created as a federal charter in 1972 in responding to calling for racial justice. And the interesting things that 50 years later, history repeats itself. And so NMSDC created the gold standard of MBE certification. So as I shared, for the last 50 years, NMSDC has been advocating for the inclusion of minority businesses. And because we believe every business deserves an unbiased chance. And so by helping, our minority-owned businesses, we're shaping a better world for all. So let me share with you where we have been, the results we have, and where we're going. So our results is, our network today, we have about over 15,000 certified MBEs and 1,500 corporate members. We have 23 regional councils across the United States, and we have 5 international affiliates. We're probably only nonprofit have a CDFI arm. And results I shared earlier about $400 billion annual revenue and 2.2 million jobs. We're very proud of what we have achieved, but we have a long way to go to close the racial wealth gap and to achieve economic equity. So as we celebrate our 50th anniversary this year, we're really taking a game-changing actions and to grow our MBE revenue to 1 trillion. And a few things we're working on, besides internally, we're working on our culture and upgrade people's skill set. Really focus on technology. There's no leadership without technology leadership. So we're very fortunate to have our corporate members, came forward, gives pro bono services. We're assessing end-to-end technology. What does the future state look like and how to get there? So we can be the most technologically advanced nonprofit or for impact organization in the world. So it's going to be technology enabled future for us.
Absolutely. The interesting thing about hearing you talk about the numbers is I'm always amazed with that the people I come across that don't know what the infrastructure of the minority business sector looks like. They've never heard of NMSDC. They've never heard of NAIC. They don't know that there are so many certified MBEs, 15,000 to use your number. They don't know about all the private equity firms that people of color control, yet they consider themselves an expert on diversity. And I'm like, how do you not know all of these very obvious, significant things? But I say all of that, Ying, to say if we didn't have an NMSDC today, we would have to create one, right? And if you think about what that really means, imagine attempting to align 1,500 corporations that all had a similar need but didn't quite know how to manifest it. Imagine identifying 15,000 companies, assembling the talented staff you have, and then getting the world to really understand how it all works together. Talk to us a little bit about what certification is and what the value of being certified means.
Yeah, so the certification is really make sure you're putting in dollar in the right sets of communities, right? And so have the rigor, have the integrity in the certification is very critical. So you can't possibly validate, the minority structure, ownership, operated, and managed within 15 minutes. So we have gold standard certification. And with that being said, our certification process was invented. We invented this 50 years ago before we had a cell phone and internet. So what we must do is we need to evolve that. So what we're doing right now, it's really working on certification automation. How do we utilize today's technology and to make it faster, less expensive, and easy to use without compromised integrity of our certification? So we need to keep up. And on that, we're not known. So I think we're known with supply diversity of the world, chief procurement officer of Fortune 1000 company. But you're right, we're the best untold stories in the general market and even on the Capitol Hill and with the mainstream media and with CEOs. So that's why this year we are stepping up. We are telling the story to CEOs, CMOs, CFO, CIOs, and CPOs and legislators. So in a couple of weeks, Bob, I'm going to share with you that something we have launched. In a couple of weeks, we're going to launch a new award system recognizing these C-suite leaders who have made tremendous effort and produced tremendous results in doing business with minority-owned businesses and help advancing economic equity. So we want to be known in the C-suite level and also become household name in the near future.
So let's go back and unpack. You said own, operate, and manage. Those are the criteria for the NMSDC certification. So let's talk first about ownership. What does ownership look like? How much do you have to own? How flexible is that, depending upon circumstances? But what does ownership look like for an MBE, or need to look like to be a certified MBE?
Yeah, so thank you for that certification one-on-one question. Traditionally, it has been 51% owned.
Yep.
And however, the economy, the new economy have a very different financial structure. So the question is, how do we incent and help MBE taking on external equity capital and help them grow so they can generate more jobs and making more economic impact? So we're revisiting, we actually have a growth initiative that actually lower the ownership percentage to allow MBEs to take in outside equity capital. As you know, venture capital fuel the growth
That's right.
of a company in Silicon Valley. So we're in the process really examining and revisiting our criteria, because at the end of the day, we're here to create economic impact. That's what matters.
No, that is exactly right. And I applaud you guys for taking on that topic. It's not one that you think of immediately when you think about MBEs, but the truth is the same for an MBE versus a Silicon Valley startup. You're not going to have total ownership of the company. You're not going to always have 51% ownership of the company. But as we say in the venture business, it's better to own a piece of something larger than all of something smaller. And I applaud NMSDC for, not just starting this, but continuing to grow and evolve it. The next category you mentioned was operate. What do you mean when you say operate, and what does that look like in terms of certification?
Yeah, so we probably should have a next level deep dive with my certification expert to give you a little more detail, right? We have a great team to provide explanation on that.
Fair enough. And then lastly is managed. But the point of all three working together is that you don't want a company to be unbalanced. You don't want it to simply be a financial vehicle and operated and managed by people who are not minorities themselves. You actually have taken a look at the whole enterprise. Let's move on, Ying. Today, you spend a lot of your time talking to procurement officers and talking to CEOs. What's on the mind of those big companies? And how do they think about their responsibilities and opportunities in the MBE space?
Yeah, I think fortunately, many corporations have stepped up. You heard they made public pledges, the $200 billion pledges pledged by Fortune 1000 company for racial equity. And the question is how we can help facilitate those dollars to go to the right communities, right? And just last year alone, we gained 186 new corporate members. And most of them, this is the first time they're creating supply diversity program. So this is amazing. The environment, people really, woke up and realize, if they don't do anything different, it's going to take, decades to close the racial wealth gap. And when minority become majority in 2045, if this population is not better off, the whole country will be worse off. So people, I think, start to realize it's not just minority business development. It is an economic development strategy for our country.
That's so true. And frankly, regardless of the circumstances that cause them to wake up, the opportunity is before you, which is to really help them. When companies 2 years ago said we want to do more in DE&I, one of the most obvious places to do more was to spend more money, right? Spend more money with MBEs. What are some of the sectors that you're most excited about that MBEs are represented in, and who are I know they're all your baby, but who are some of the companies that people should know about when they think about MBEs?
So we have MB, like, yeah, they are my children, right?
I knew you were going to say that.
So we have, four different classes, and class one under 1 million, and class two under 10, and class three under 50, and class four above 50. And then we have a corporate plus members, and their revenue as much as 13, 15 billion. And so for companies looking for, large and scalable MBEs, we have this program called Corporate Plus program. We have about 111 MBEs in there. So those are the ones have been proven to multiple Fortune 500 companies in very large and global scale contract execution. So if they're looking for the largest scalable MBEs, that's one of the areas. But corporations, they can create MBEs. They can really play a huge role in growing MBEs. And one of my favorite stories I want to tell is how Toyota created a Hispanic-owned manufacturer for truck bed, and it created hundreds of jobs in the Hispanic community. And so that's kind of actions the corporation can take, not only adopt and utilize already strong MBE, but it's really go cultivate and nurture the smaller ones and help them grow into from class 1 to 2 and the 3 and the 4. What about each corporation make a pledge to grow MBE 1% incremental each year? What would that do for a national economy? What about each C-level taking on mentoring a MBE each year? How would that help our MBE scale and it become the mainstream society? So I think there are a lot of things our corporation can do to really help to lift the whole community of color, and as a result, really help our economy.
So one of the things that the NMSDC is known for and has done a great job over the years, frankly, you had to do almost your first 90 days in office, the NMSDC conference, right? And I remember my first conference, you always have it in the biggest expo hall. There are, every single corporation. I mean, it literally looks like a who's who within that. But talk to us about the challenge of doing that in your first probably 90 to 120 days in office, but also where are you all going in terms of what the conference is versus what it will become?
Oh, thank you, Bob. So I was very impressed by NMSDC's conference when I was sent to NMSDC conference when I took on the role as Supply Diversity Officer of Dell. And I was like, wow, everybody's here. I think there were like 3,000 corporate members and 3,000 MBEs and advocacy groups. And it was a place to be. People are connecting with each other and building relationship, do business with each other, form lifelong friendship. And it was pretty amazing. But when I came on board last year, it was end of July. It was in the middle of the COVID. You can't have this conference, right? How do we still serve our communities when you can't be normal?
Right.
And when you can't have in-person conference. So we actually pivoted pretty quickly. We did a very interactive virtual conference in late October. And we brought some of your members, like Rob Smith, with one of our keynote speakers. And we brought many C-suite and shared with us their strategy, the future direction, how MBE can leverage seize opportunities. We brought in program like Women of Color and to talk about infrastructure. We had Secretary Peter Buttigieg talking about infrastructure bill and what does that mean for MBEs. So we were able to really pivot and to a virtual and still able to serve our MBEs and our corporate members. And this year, we're going to go hybrid because there's certain people want to be in person, We have been stay home for 2 years and the people want to come out, and the others still not comfortable, want to be cautious. So we want to be able to do hybrid and offer our events to both sets of customers and the clients and our partners. And this year we have two very exciting signature event. One is we're creating one. So it's the inaugural Minority Business Economic Forum.
Wow.
And that's going to be in Chicago, May 11th to 13th. And that was inspired by the World Economic Forum.
Mhm.
As you know, in the Davos agenda, the top leaders in politics, business, and community come together to talk about most pressing economic issues and talk about solutions. So in Chicago, that's our Chicago agenda this May. We're gonna gather top leaders in business, in policy, in community, come together to recalibrate the narrative for MBE in the America's economy. And we're going to talk about barriers and the solutions. We're going to give corporations opportunities to form this long-term relationship with some of our scalable MBEs. And we're going to recognize some of the C-suite leaders who have made a difference in driving economic equity. So that it's going to be a tech conference style, highly energetic and lots of relationship building. And then in October 30th to November 2nd, we have a 50th anniversary annual conference. And so we're in the process of planning this, and we're going to make it like no other event. And I look forward to welcome many of your members to joining us over there. So, Bob, you're invited.
I will be there. I was hoping to be invited, but I was going to come regardless. So I was going to crash the party.
You're welcome to crash my party, Bob.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to shift gears a little bit and demonstrate, and we've got 10 minutes left or so, but I want to talk a little bit about the leadership challenge that you have. We've talked a lot about the external leadership challenge and the vision and the many things you're going to do. And I applaud you on the deep thinking around all of that. I applaud you on refreshing the programs and the agenda, but you have another unique challenge. You have 23 people within your organization that carry a title of president of something at NMSDC. And they are your regional council presidents. Talk a little bit about the collaboration between the national organization you run and each of these very market-focused councils around the country.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually are looking at it and to see what's the most effective way to run as a network. I don't have a perfect answer for you yet, but the one that we are implementing at the national office, it's really a pay for performance culture. We have the rigor, accountability at the national office. Everybody have their performance plan. They get paid based on their ability to deliver to their goals. And so we're working on the national office first, and then in the near future, we want to extend the same rigor and accountability to our regional council partners. And so so the future is, we're really looking at how do we structure for the next 50 years so we can deliver two things. One, help our MBE grow, and two is bring value to our corporate members.
Very good, very good. But when we think about the councils, they're different based upon the economy of the market. So the council surrounding Detroit is, to no surprise, heavily automotive and connected in that way. And the San Francisco council is heavily tech focused. In terms of thinking about the different regions and sectors of the country, NMSDC is actually a part of every single industry, right? Every place that corporate America is doing business, there are MBEs that are working and trying to do business. Talk a little bit about that challenge of being everywhere, Ying.
Yeah, and it's a good and bad. The challenge is you have so many different industries that we need to serve, but the goodness is there are commonalities.
That's right.
And so automobile industry and in Detroit, and the high tech industry in Western region, and the oil industry in Houston, they have commonalities. For example, they all need to use trucking company. They all need to use office supply. They all need to use software services. So I think there are a large portion of commonalities, and yes, there's some differences. But the beautiful thing is, each region have their niche. And then if you harness all 23 region working together, we can be good on many things. Like you have 23 entrepreneurs.
That's right.
And running their business and be good at in their space. So, and at NMSDC, we have over dozens of industry groups, and there are the supply diversity practitioners, they're the procurement professionals. They come together and collaborate, and they don't compete in our world. They collaborate and help each other to raise the bar in growing their minority business spend. So it's a good thing.
That's outstanding. Okay, I'm gonna get out of your business now. I've been all over in your org chart and your business, and you've been a gracious guest around that. I want to take the opportunity, and this will be a little off script, but you're 100% prepared for it. Let's talk a little bit about how different communities of color can work together better. I'm obviously from the African American community, but I have a multicultural organization. You're Chinese, Asian, have a multicultural organization. What can African Americans and Asians better understand about each other to help us work better together?
That's a great question. And I want to share with you my experience working on Austin. So I really believe you have to collaborate in order to win.
Okay.
And if you divide it, you cannot win. I want to share with you an experience that I had. So when I first came to Austin, I was recruited to join this organization called the Texas Asian Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And, I was recruited to be on the board, and soon they elected me to be the chair. And then one day, my chief diversity officer at Dell Technology came to me, said, okay, so you're with Texas Asian Chamber, but I have this, Austin Asian American Chamber coming to me for funding. Like, who's who? What's going on? And I thought to myself, wow, it's a small town to have two Asian chambers. Why can't we work together? So I reached out, and it didn't happen overnight. It took us 10 years to merge the two chambers. And now today is the Greater Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce. And now we're strong. We have a strong voice in government and business because we decide to work together.
That's right.
And I don't think that's a difference between different ethnic groups. In Austin, we have called a MECA, multi-ethnic Chamber of Commerce group. And we work together. We work with a Black chamber. We work with Hispanic chamber and Young chamber and LGBTQ chamber. And we work as a group as in our negotiation with the city and in our many events. I really believe if we unite, we can do a whole lot more. Mm-hmm. Therefore, when I came on board, I created a position called the VP of Strategic Alliances. And the goal is to work with people like your organization, yep. work with Urban League and the Black Chamber and the LGBTQ organization, a woman organization, veteran, disability, and so that we can be a united force to work on these economic development issues together.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful answer, Ying, and I think that you're absolutely right. Collaboration is the key, and it's really the key to scale. Right? We all have to have scale, and all of these groups have to have resources. And it's never made any sense to have 3, 4, 5 groups with very similar missions that refuse to work together because they think that there's a greater opportunity to win alone. No, you should win together, right? And I'm glad that you have that focus, and frankly, it'll drive a lot of success. I want to shift gears a little bit for my next to last question. And I couldn't help but hear you mention certain names and your reference to them as your own mentors. right? And I know you and I have had this conversation about kitchen cabinets and mentors and people that are champions for us. Talk about who some of your mentors are. If you don't mind, you can name them. You don't have to name them. But what has that mentor helped you personally with?
Yeah, I have had many mentors, many of them along the way, and some of them just come naturally, and many of them like worked with me or supervised me. Like my first one was my first manager at Dell, Valerie Houselade, and she owns a business now. And my other great mentor, like Bill Waverill, who's the president of Dell Financial Service now, and Mark Hawkins was newly retired president CFO from Salesforce, and all of those people I worked for became very natural mentors to me. And today, like I have a great mentor, Jose from Tukanich. I still have a tough time pronouncing his last name. The UPS CPO. He also in charge of global services, real estate. He's our board chair, and he's a great mentor. I often go to him with questions and unknowns, and get his feedback. And the other mentors, like you kind of seek out for different reasons. Like I had a mentor who still is the founder and CEO of Vizio, the TV
Mhm.
company. And most recently, I started to work with Mark Morrell of Urban League, because he came in into Urban League with a similar like budget size and a similar state of the business. So I want to learn from him how he grew Urban League to what is today. So I look up to him as my mentor. In fact, I just finished reading his book called Gumbo Coalition. It's basically he's saying, gumbo is made of many different ingredients. That's a beautiful thing. So I think all these mentors like helped me bring in different ingredients, and it made me who I am today. So when people say, "Oh, I'm self-made," I don't believe that. I believe I'm made by help from many people's like mentors. So
Well, when you have that many mentors, it says a lot about who you are as a mentee. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what you have to allow yourself to be to allow people to groom you and pour into you and teach you? How do you receive that, and how do you operationalize it personally?
yeah, so you have to have the mindset like to be open to feedback and
Mhm.
suggestions. Like and I'm everywhere I go, everything I do, I'm like authentic myself, and you can tell me anything you want to,
Mhm.
and I don't get offended, don't not take personally.
Mhm.
And I'm like sponge. I love to learn from people. A lot of learning I did was from people, talking to people in the hallway, at a dinner table,
Mhm.
over drinks, go hunt together. And so learning from people is like the best thing. Like that's how you grow, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really, have find somebody you can get along, have fun with, and learn from them, pick their brain, ask lots of questions. So you're gonna notice like I ask lots of questions,
Yes.
and I learn from the answers. And so I have fun learning from my folks.
Well, so the last question, you successfully made the journey immigrating from China. You found your way to Austin. Austin's a little bit different than most places in the US, and we love Austin for it. You great corporate career, and you now have the title of CEO, and you're running a national organization. What advice do you give? It doesn't have to be to Chinese people, it can be to anybody wanting to grow and make it in America. What advice do you give based upon your journey about how to do that?
Yeah, I think one, I had a lot of flexibilities. Like, when I see a dead end, I change direction.
Hmm.
And I changed the profession. My undergrad major was tourism, and I went to technology
Hmm.
and acquire new skills. Really, change can set you free. So it's really being flexible.
Hmm.
I came in, didn't speak much English,
Hmm.
and I had to learn. So and then really goal setting, have an end goal in mind. And so kind of making me focus to look beyond the obstacles or noise. And right now my goal is 1 trillion MBE revenue. So that's my goal. And hard work, I watched my parents like work very, very hard without complaining. And so when I started my career with Dell, my baseline was very low. And so I had to work longer hours than my peers in order to do what they do. So it's really work ethic. And then learning. So I practice my ability to learn very fast, learn from the best. And I really thrive on learning and acquire new skills. And then finally is giving back. So, when I was working at Dell for 11 years, I always involved in the community. I actually co-founded the Dell's Asian Network Group, back in days, probably 2002. And, I always volunteered for nonprofit and volunteered as an advisor to government agencies. And as you give back, you meet so many amazing people who teach you, who show you the path. And so you get back when you give back. So that's kind of my words of advice.
Awesome answer. Let me recap for everybody. So flexibility, learning, goal setting, hard work, and giving back.
You got it.
Awesome. Awesome. Ying, you've been an amazing guest. I applaud your vision. I applaud how quickly you've hit the ground running, the impact that you've made already. I'm looking forward to working with you. If you can't tell, I'm a huge fan. And I think that there's no doubt in my mind you're going to get to $1 trillion. And I look forward to helping you do that. So thank you so much for joining us on Insights today.
Thank you, Bob. My pleasure. Look forward to working with you.
Very best. Bye-bye now.
Bye.